Cold-blooded, brutal, calculated, deliberate, devious, malicious. A hammer, a wrench, a pipe, a rope, a piece of metal, and cable ties. It's like a pain that ripped through our bodies. The grief is like a lightning strike. A dark cloud has been cast over my heart. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Alrighty, well, thanks if you've been in touch about the last story. Lots of you with your theories about organ theft and what that story was all about. So this story, okay, well, let me tell you. I quite like to find stories that I don't think have been covered by a lot of other podcasts or, been overly exposed. And I think you will potentially know this story if you listen to any sort of true crime podcasts. It's been on a couple of TV shows. But you know what? Settle down and listen to my version of it. I really like this story. Not the grisly, sort of gruesome part of it, but just the strangeness and the calculating, bizarre nature of it. So even if you have heard it before, just stay with me. Alright, okay. I'm going to just do a couple of quick shout-outs and then we will get to the story. Alright, let's start with Michelle Robinson. Hello, Michelle. Michelle writes on the Facebook group, "Hey Baz, you gave us a shout out last year. The girls from Acon Labs in San Diego." Yes, I did. Yes, I remember. She says, "Can we have another one?" And then she gives me a list of people to shout out. So, hello, this is for you in the Acon Lab in San Diego. So, Michelle, hello, Michelle Robinson. Kinky Mark. Hello, Kinky Mark. D, hello D, and Old Man Malcolm. What a list! What a list of people! What a cast of people that is. So hello to you all. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I genuinely appreciate the ear time that you give me. So thank you very much. Alright, next. Wayne McPherson. Now, Wayne, hello. Or should I say, g'day. Wayne's Australian, in case you didn't get that from what I was saying. So Wayne has emailed me to say that he is a late listener to the podcast, but he has gotten through them all and he's caught up. He says he is driving his kids insane with his "hello, how are you well, are you good" Scottish impression. Well, do you know what, Wayne? I say, put up or shut up. Send me a recording. Let me hear it. Let me hear it, Wayne. I want to hear your Scottish impression. He says, I find myself retelling your stories to my partner and my work colleagues, which I think that's great. I do it all the time with other podcasts. I literally will go, oh my God, wait till you hear what I just heard on this podcast. Usually it's to people who don't actually really like a lot of true crime stuff or really like interesting stories. And I'm like, why are you not getting that this is amazing? Why are you not understanding that this is absolutely brilliant? So anyway, sorry, I've gone off track there, but hello, Wayne. Hello. Thanks for your email. I really appreciate it. Alright, Sophie Louise on Instagram. Hi. Or it might be Sophie Norton. I'm a bit confused if you're Sophie Norton or you're Sophie Louise, but you're Sophie anyway. And we'll just go with that. You got in touch to say that you really like the podcast and you've just realised that it's been 2 years since I started the podcast. And you're catching up. So, Sophie, hello. Ron Lynch. Hello, Ron. Nice to see you popping up in the Facebook group. Lovely to have you there. So, hello, Ron. And the last shout out goes to, now I hope I'm saying this correctly, Binder Daliwal. I might have got the surname wrong. I'm really sorry if I have, Binder. It could be Dalival. Is my instinct's telling me it might be Dalival, but I'm just going to go with how it's written down. But anyway, Binder, hello, hi, thank you for joining the Facebook group and lighting up the group with your great chat. Nice to have you about and nice to have you listening to the podcast. Alright, on with the story. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Alright, let's talk about perspectives. Depending on where you are looking at this story, it's a bizarre one. And I think from whenever I've heard it before, it always centres on the main people involved. But there were other people in this story who had a big stake in what happened. And hopefully the way I'm going to tell it might throw those characters into it just a little bit more. So it's March 2011. It's just outside of Washington, D.C. in a place called Bethesda. No, I don't think it's called Bethesda. What is it called? Bethesda. Why can I not say it correctly? Bethesda. There we go. Alright, let's start with Detective Dmitry Ruvin. I love Dmitry, by the way, in this story, and I really hope you're going to love him as much as I do. Honestly, I just want to find the man and give him a big hug. So who is Dmitry? Well, he's a sharp-looking, smart detective in his mid-30s, and he's got like a really keen eye for crime and a real passion for justice. People will say the reason that he's such a successful detective at quite a relatively young age, only in his 30s, he's so good at his job because he's so passionate. He so cares about the truth, and he always wants to get to the truth for the victims of a crime. He's absolutely driven by not being, one of these detectives that's like, oh, I just want to bust the bad guys. He's actually coming from it from the place where he's like, for the sake of the victim of this crime, I need to get to the real answer of what's happened in any case that he's looking at. So in his home life, he's happily married to his gorgeous wife, and he has a new baby son who's only about 6 months old. So for Dmitry, it's lots of sleepless nights. And of course, being a detective, he works all manner of mad, crazy hours. So as I said, it's March. It's 2011. And at 8:15 a.m, he gets a call at home. And it's to tell him that a terrible crime has happened and he needs to get to the scene now. So from his perspective, he's leaving the house. He's waiting for the details to come through, Where does he have to go? What's the rundown of kind of what's happened? And he hears that 2 dead bodies, brutally beaten and potentially sexually assaulted, have been found. So he thinks, okay, where is it? And now he's expecting to be told a house address or a street address somewhere in Bethesda. And the address he receives, it surprises him greatly. It's a shop in the trendy and expensive part of the town. Let's leave Dimitri for just a second, for just one moment. Let's go to this shop. Let's go to this store. Remember, he gets this call at 8:15 in the morning. So what had happened to lead up to this phone call? Well, in the 24 hours beforehand, it had been a usual day of business in the Lululemon yoga store. Right, what is the yoga? What is the Lululemon store? Well, it's a place for selling yoga pants, running shoes, yeah, generally yoga gear like yoga mats, yoga bandanas, all that kind of stuff. But it was, well, still is, a very trendy and very, very expensive yoga wear shop. This is not your average, I'm going to a yoga class down my local centre. I better spend 20 quid on some yoga gear. This is more, I'm going to go and buy some Lululemon yoga pants and they're going to set you back $200 kind of thing. Which is fine, I'm not judging that, at all. If that's what you want to spend your money on, that's okay. But just to get that idea, Lululemon is very high end in terms of yoga gear, yoga wear. So this particular store, it had a few employees, and we're just going to look at 2 of them. We're going to look at Jaina Murray, firstly. Okay, who is Jaina? Well, she is a 30-year-old woman and she's in the 2nd year of her master's degree in business. And she's been an employee at Lululemon for a good few years. She's actually the assistant manager in this store. She has a loving boyfriend who she's been with for a long, long time. And although Jaina doesn't know it, he's planning to propose to her. Very nice. Jaina, from all descriptions of her, she gets described as a really happy, a charming and a really likeable person by everyone who knows her. Her friends, her family, and everyone who ever worked with her in Lululemon. She was really popular among staff. She's a pretty, blonde, full of life, full of energy, and very, very smart. Very switched on. So, Jaina's heading for good things in her life. I feel like maybe that's a wee bit of a bland, rubbish description of Jaina, but essentially I did a lot of research into who she was, and those were the things that just kept coming up from everybody. That she just was this great person and so popular and outgoing and just, everyone really, really liked her. So the job that she had in the yoga store, it was just really to support her whilst she did her master's degree. It wasn't really her long-term plan to work in Lululemon forever, but, this was fine for just now. Okay, so let's talk about one of her co-workers. A Ms. Brittany Norwood. So, Brittany was a few years younger. She was sort of mid to late 20s. And she was working towards becoming a personal trainer. She was really sporty, really fit, really driven by physical activity. Becoming a personal trainer was absolutely the goal for Brittany. Personal trainers, though. Sleazy bastards. I mean, not to tar them all with the same brush, but they're a sexy bunch, aren't they? I mean, all I'm saying is, if your partner has a personal trainer, keep an eye on them. I think they're all a bit rat bags. I'm sorry if you are a personal trainer listening to this. I don't mean you. Obviously, I just mean everyone else. Now, Brittany. Oh, Brittany was troubled. Yeah, she was known to get into fights quite a lot with people. She had a quick temper. The other problem with Brittany was, and it was known and people talked about it, is that she was quite light-fingered. And there had been rumours at Lululemon of staff finding their purses and their wallets with money missing and locker doors being opened and just, some of their personal belongings were vanishing when Brittany was around. Brittany had actually been transferred to this store in Bethesda from another Lululemon shop because, well, there wasn't the proof. Really, that's the problem. There wasn't really the proof to actually fire her from the Lululemon company. So instead what they did was they sort of moved her around to other stores. I mean, that is never a good idea. Is it? It's a bit sort of, let's hide the problem in some way rather than actually face it. And I think what that company needed to do was actually face it head on. Now, what's happening in the store that her and Jaina are working in? Well, the same thing. Staff were reporting to Jaina that bits and pieces of their stuff, it was going missing. They were just losing, money was disappearing out of their wallets, their belongings were just vanishing mysteriously. And so there was a watchful eye on Brittany. There was a very watchful eye. So it's the 11th of March 2011 and Jaina and Brittany, they are working together. They're doing the late shift and they're closing up the shop. So they're closing it up around about 10 p.m. at night. All other staff are gone, it's just the two of them. So they shut the shop down. They get ready to go. And as usual, you get this in a lot of the clothing stores. There's a standard bag check for every employee as they leave. I've never worked in a clothes shop, but I've seen people who have worked in clothes shops, and as they leave, they just open their bag and show their colleagues that they've, not stolen anything. So it's just as they're leaving and they're at the door that Jaina looks into Brittany's bag, standard check, and she sees something disturbing. She sees a pair of Lululemon yoga pants in Brittany's bag. Now, in this moment, what happens is Brittany sees Jaina looking at them. They lock eyes for a minute. And Brittany says, "Oh, I actually bought these from another employee. And that's why they're in my bag." Jaina doesn't believe it for a second. She doesn't believe that. And she thinks, okay, that's fine, I'll deal with this tomorrow, or I'll deal with this another time. So they go their separate ways to head home. Now, as soon as Brittany is out of sight and is heading for the train, Jaina calls this supposed other employee and she asks, "Did you sell Brittany a pair of yoga pants?" And the other employee says, No. No, I didn't. Now, Jaina knows this. She knows this isn't the truth, but she just wanted to give Brittany the benefit of the doubt. She knows it's the truth, but, she thinks, okay, I'll just check. So knowing this information, Jaina's thinking, right, I'm just going to get home and we'll just deal with this tomorrow. She gets to her car. Now her car's parked almost outside of the shop. It's really close. She parks in a sort of similar place whenever she's working. And it's as she gets into her car that her phone rings. And it's Brittany. Now they've only just parted ways minutes ago. So Jaina answers the call and Brittany says, "Hi, listen, I've just got to the train station and I've realised I don't have my train pass. I've left it in my locker. Is there any way that you can open the shop and just let me run back in, grab my pass?" She says, "I don't have enough money for the train, so I really need the pass, otherwise there's no way for me to get home." And Jaina says, "Right, okay, well that's fine, just hurry up, come back as fast as you possibly can. I'll reopen the shop, you can get your pass." And she's a bit annoyed because actually really just what she wants to do is get home. So moments later, Brittany appears and she says, "Thanks so much. I'll just go in and I'll get it." Now, if you're Jaina, are you going to let Brittany, the thief, go into that shop alone? No chance. So she goes in with her. The street is really busy because the Lululemon shop is right next to the Apple store. And on that day, there had been the launch of some new iPhone thing. But it's that time of night where all the shops are starting to close down, but there's still quite a lot of people buzzing around the iPhone store. So there's a fair few people around on the streets. So they go in to the shop. Jaina opens the shutter and in they go. Let's go to the next morning. So the morning that Detective Dimitri is going to receive the phone call. So it's about 7:45 a.m. and the manager has arrived to open up the Lululemon store. And the first thing that she notices is that the door is slightly open. And she thinks, well, that doesn't look right. So she goes into the shop. And in the front of the shop, she can see that clothing has been pulled off the rails, shelves have been ransacked, and there's just chaos everywhere. So she feels really uneasy about it. And what she does is, she goes outside of the shop and she finds a guy in the street, just a random stranger, a big sort of tall, strapping guy, and she says, "Look, I think something has happened inside my store, but I'm really scared to go back in myself, so can you go in ahead of me?" The stranger's a bit like, okay, well, I could potentially be walking into danger, but alright. So he does it. He goes in and he looks around and he sees the same. He just sees chaos all over the shop. But then he sees something much, much worse. When Dimitri Ruvin gets the call, it's 8:15 and he has to go to the Lululemon store. When he gets there, he walks into a horrific scene. Two female bodies lie lifeless in the store, covered in blood. One is the body of Jaina, and the other is the body of Brittany. So he looks and he thinks, oh Christ, I've got two dead bodies on my hands here. What has happened? And as I said earlier on, this is a nice town. Brutal attacks and murders, well, they just, they weren't common. They didn't happen. So, Detective Dimitri, he immediately calls for reinforcement and for ambulances and for forensics. And as he's walking around the scene, he hears a noise. Almost like a little cry or a whimper, and it's coming from one of the bodies on the ground. It's coming from Brittany's body. He leans down to check and discovers that Brittany Norwood is actually still alive. Just to describe how he found the bodies, Brittany had been attacked and there were marks all over her body. Some on her head, some on her arms, some on her legs, and it's what looks like stab marks. And as she's lying on her back and her hands have been cable tied together and they're above her head. Jaina is also lying on her back, but Jaina is dead. She appears to have taken the worst of the beatings. She is covered in blood. And Detective Dimitri can identify straight away that she's been attacked with a variety of different things. He sees what he thinks looks like hammer marks. He sees knife wounds. It's been vicious. It's been absolutely, he concludes immediately, a sustained and very, very brutal attack. So an ambulance arrives and Brittany is sent to the hospital. And the shop, it gets marked as a crime scene and police are stationed outside of the store. I read an interview with one of the residents of that town who said this was probably the most terrifying time in this place. She said things like this just don't happen round here. And it was like everyone was just watching over their shoulder in fear that there was some kind of maniac or a gang of violent thugs sneaking through the town. So the families are informed and, oh God, poor Jaina's family have to be told that their daughter is dead and that it has been brutal. Her poor boyfriend, the one who was going to propose to her, I just feel for him a lot here. He has to be told that she's died in this most brutal way and potentially sexually assaulted. Jaina's body is taken to be... Hang on, what's the right word? Pathologised? Is that the right word? Nah. You know what I mean. Like forensically tested to understand what's happened to her body, to see the extent of her injuries. Oh, for fuck's sake, it's pathologised. Is that right? A pathologist gets involved. Basically, oh my God, literally, what? I literally do a podcast which covers true crime cases and I can't actually get the word that I'm trying to look for. Yeah. I'm going to say pathologised is a word. Right, fine. So, Jaina's body goes to be examined and Brittany is in hospital. Now, Dimitri, he gets in there quickly for questioning because he's like, you know what, I want to get on this right now. I'm the main detective on it and I want answers. What happened here? How the hell can this have occurred? And well, Brittany, she can explain the whole situation. She starts with the fact that they had to return to the store after it had closed because she had no train pass. And she explains that as they entered the shop, they left the shutter up. And, they were only dropping in really for a second. And she says that it's at that point 2 black males wearing masks enter the shop and they begin to attack her and Jaina. She explains that they were both attacked with hammers, and then the two men sexually assaulted both women. Brittany explains that the men dragged Jaina away to another part of the store, and that as she tried to run, one of the men grabbed her. He cable tied her hands, threw her to the ground, and then assaulted her. Brittany explains that they ransacked the store and then they left, and that she was then just too terrified to move. Dimitri asks, "So you lay there all night?" She says, "Yeah, I was so scared to move in case they came back. And I couldn't figure out where Jaina was and if she was okay." And he says, "I'm so sorry for how horrendous this has been for you." Brittany finds it really hard to talk about, and she gets upset having to relive the experience for the detective. Dimitri goes back to the store and he starts his investigation. Now, there are bloody footprints throughout the shop where blood from Jaina's body has been tracked throughout the store. So he's looking at those and he's thinking, right, okay, there's probably going to be a pretty massive clue within that. Then he asks the manager if she would go through the store, figure out what's been stolen. Perhaps he's thinking this is a way that we could maybe track down these two attackers. Well, murderers, I suppose, would really be the right word. Because, they can start to see if Lululemon clothing is suddenly popping up to be sold in places where it maybe normally wouldn't. Or, is it, is that a way to basically figure out who's behind this? So tests begin to determine the make of the shoe, and the store manager is looking at, right, what has been taken. He remembers that Brittany... I'm just gonna pause at this point and tell you. Every single time I say Brittany's name, right? do you know the song by... don't worry, I'm not going to sing. Do you know the song by Britney Spears that starts, "It's Britney, bitch"? It's a song she did years ago, right? Every single bloody time I say Britney's name, all I hear in my head is, "It's Britney, bitch." It's really weird. I feel like I'm going mad. Anyway, that aside, back on track. He remembers that Brittany has said that Jaina had been at her car when she called to say, "Oh, can I get back to the store and find my train pass?" So Dimitri, he thinks, right, well, I'm going to go looking for the car. And he's told by the manager, Jaina always parks roughly in the same area. It's kind of just outside the shop. But when he goes to look, her car isn't there. So he starts to look a bit further round the block and he can't see it. So he goes the other way. He goes a few streets back, and lo and behold, there's the car. Not in her usual parking space, but here it is. So he calls for the forensic team, and they look at the car, and inside of it they find blood. Now, at this point, right, he is scratching his head and he's thinking, why is there blood in the car? That's just bloody weird. That's odd. Very strange. So he's trying to join all the dots together and he's thinking, right, well, if you were the two guys who committed this absolutely horrific crime, you're not above stealing a car. So surely what's actually happened is they've committed this crime, they've killed Jaina, and what they've done is they've taken the keys from her bag, and after the attack, they've somehow been able to find which is her car. I don't know, like maybe they've gone round and, done the thing where you press the key and the car flashes or whatever. But then they've just moved the car. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why haven't they stolen it? Why is it not gone? Like, why would you do that? That would be like, I don't know, like that would be like robbing somebody's house, right? And as your final act before you leave, taking their welcome mat from their front door and moving it into like another garden. And like, it's weird. Like, why would you do that? Why would you? It's very odd. Why is the car 3 streets away with blood in it? It just doesn't make any sense. So he's like racking his brains and going, oh, hang on, this is very peculiar. But he makes sense of the blood in the car because he thinks, well, they would be covered in blood if they had just viciously beaten and murdered Jaina. Then yeah, they'd be covered in blood. So that bit of it makes sense. The fact it's moved 3 streets away doesn't make any sense. It's very weird. So, tests come back on the shoe prints, and it's a male size 14 shoe that has left these bloody prints. So, big shoes. And you know what they say about men with big feet? Big socks. Shit joke. But it did actually make me laugh. Let's talk about Dimitri's wife for a second. In those first few days of the investigation, she will describe that he is like a man possessed. She says he can literally not focus on anything at home. He's still going through the routine, so he's like still waking up, to do the nighttime feeds for his baby son. But then he's like staying awake for hours and he's just pacing up and down the house until it's time to go to work. And when she talks to him about it, what he keeps saying to her is, something's not right. It just doesn't make sense. So, looking at it from his perspective, as I said, this doesn't happen in this town. But for Dimitri, the other thing that's going on is he wants to prove he can do this. He can solve this. He doesn't want to get to the place where he has to call in the FBI. He doesn't want to have to call in the big guns. He's determined he's going to bloody solve this. I get that. I absolutely get that. I don't know. Maybe that's just my personality, but I'd be the same. I'd be like, no, I am fucking solving this myself. We're not calling in the FBI. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. So I do understand where he's coming from here. As I said earlier on, he does come at cases and at solving things from the point of view where he actually just cares about the victim. He really cares about the victim and he wants justice for them. So that's why he's so fucking determined. He is going to discover who these people were that committed this crime. So now he's completely absorbed in this. Dimitri's going between the hospital to see Brittany. Can she remember any more information? He keeps seeing her every day. Is there anything else that's come back to you? Any even small detail? Anything will do. And then when he's not with Brittany, he's at the store, hoping that a clue might appear. Or just hoping that each time he walks into that shop, he might just get a different way of looking at it. And that maybe something might start to reveal itself. Now, what they do find in the shop are the weapons that were used to kill Jaina and to attack Brittany. And it's grim. There's a hammer, there's rope, there's a variety of knives, and there's a piece of metal that had been ripped from a shelving unit. There are a total of 10 different weapons found in that shop, covered in Jaina and Brittany's blood, and they'd been locked in a cupboard. So now what Dimitri can deduce from this is that the attackers, well, they didn't bring the weapons. But then that just leads to more problems, because then Dimitri's thinking, well, right, come on, hang on here. Okay, so this is just two opportunistic guys walking down the street. They saw that the yoga store was open and they thought, right, well, let's just try our luck. And they ended up raping and murdering without actually thinking it through, without planning it. They didn't have any weapons on them. But, as Brittany said, they were wearing masks. So why would you be wearing a mask if you were planning to go out and commit something like that, but you didn't carry a weapon? For Dimitri, this is just getting weirder. And the next element's going to make it even odder. He goes to the Apple store, just next door to the yoga shop. And he asks if he can interview the staff who were working on the night of the murder. And when he interviews them, he asks, did you hear anything on the evening as you locked up your shop? And they say, yes. There were 3 of us closing up the store, and we heard screams coming from the yoga shop. So why didn't you do anything then? They say, well, we weren't sure that it was serious. Dimitri asks, well, what did you hear? What exactly did you hear? They say, we heard a woman screaming, stop, please don't kill me. And Dimitri, who I can only imagine wanted to explode at this moment, says, okay, so you heard this and you didn't do anything. And this is what they say, no, well, we thought that it might have been a joke, and we kind of thought about it for a while, but we realised that if it was something serious, one of the other stores would have heard it and they would probably have done something about it. Oh my god. Did these people not listen to my episode about the bystander effect? Always do something. Do not wait for someone else. Listeners, I can tell you this, right? You have got this as a Baz Henderson guarantee. If you were ever in a situation where you needed saving, I would save your life, because there is not a chance, not a fucking chance in hell, that I would hear someone screaming, please don't kill me, and not get involved. I mean, you know, partly it's because I'm a nosy bastard. And I'd be there in a heartbeat, like, hello, what's going on? Who's that superhero that moves at like lightning speed? You know, the one who's like in one place 1 minute and then 2 minutes later he's like, boom, I'm in the new place. Is that Superman? Oh, I don't really know all the superheroes. But that would be me. I'd hear like one cry of help and I'd be like there going, yes, I'm here. Can I help? But seriously, no, I would, because genuinely, I mean, you cannot hear someone shout, stop, please don't kill me, and think someone else will deal with that. Fuck off. So the chat with the Apple store workers, it just frustrates Detective Dimitri further. And now, evidence is beginning to make its way back to him. So those initial tests in those first few days, the results of them are coming in, and he's starting to get a much clearer picture of Jaina's death. And I'll warn you, it's not pretty. He learns that Jaina had been attacked, wait for it, 331 times with a variety of weapons. The weapons that I told you about. Can we just process that? 331 blows with either a hammer, a knife, a piece of metal, a wrench. For fuck's sake, that poor woman. Oh my God. Brittany's injuries, they're way more superficial. You know, there's like bruising to her face, there's scratches on her arms and her legs. So he's thinking, right, well, why was one so viciously attacked and the other not? Then he starts to wonder, and it's a good line of questioning actually, says me, like I think I'm just like some sort of detective. It's a good line of questioning actually, what the fuck am I talking about? But he starts to wonder, actually, was this a planned attack on Jaina? And does it just so happen that Brittany was there at the time? Is that potentially why she was viciously murdered and yet Brittany wasn't? Don't know. He sort of leans into that idea a little bit and thinks, well, maybe, is that what that is? Now, as he's learning of the 331 blows to her body, he also learns something else, and this is strange. Brittany had tests done at the hospital when she arrived, and tests had obviously been done on Jaina's body, and neither of these females showed any sign of sexual assault. Dimitri's wife says at this point that she saw a change in him. She saw his mind go to dark places, and he confided in her at home that he was beginning to develop a theory, and he didn't like it. He was almost scared to say what his theory was, in case he was laughed at, and the proper police would have to be brought in. But he's got ideas. Dimitri thinks he knows what's happened here, and he just needs a little bit more evidence, and then he can actually say what he thinks happened. So he goes back to see Brittany Norwood, not Spears, and she's out of hospital, and he asks her, why do you think they didn't attack you in the same way? Why are you alive and Jaina's dead? Because that was brutal, what they did to her. Do you have any theories about why that might have happened? Now, something that he is also considering, he doesn't say it, but he is considering, and it's a fact in this case, and it has to be looked at as a fact, really. As much as I'm sort of loath to bring it up, but I do think it's something that you do have to talk about when you're talking about this case, is that Brittany has always maintained it was two black men who broke into the shop and committed these crimes. But Brittany herself is black, and Jaina is the only white person in the situation. So somewhere in the back of Dimitri's brain, I mean, he's not really heavily thinking that leads anything. I mean, it's not a great theory, it's not. But, you know, it like I say, it is a fact. It would be the same as going, you had, you know, 2 males, 2 females, 3 males, 3 females, or whatever. He has to question whether race plays some sort of role within it. So he tells Brittany that the test results say that she actually wasn't sexually assaulted, and neither was Jaina. And Brittany says this, oh, sorry, I got that all wrong in the confusion. I wasn't assaulted, but Jaina was. But how would you know that? You told us she was dragged off to another part of the shop. But now you know that she was attacked. How? And Brittany says, well, I could hear the attack happening and I was too scared to do anything. She says, although I really did want to. She says, I really wanted to just go in there and stop Jaina from being attacked. I wanted to jump on those men. I wanted to hit them over the head with something. I wanted to stop it from happening. And Dimitri says, okay, that's fine. But you were tied up. You told us. So how would you have helped? How would that have worked? And she says, oh, actually, I wasn't tied up until after Jaina had been attacked. And Dimitri says, well, that's not really what you told us in the beginning. He visits Brittany each day just to go over the events. And each day there's just the littlest, just the tiniest inconsistency, just the oddest little change in her story. So he's going home each night and he's saying to his wife, I just know this isn't right. And I think I have to go with my gut feeling for the sake of Jaina, for the sake of her poor family and her boyfriend. I need to get to the truth. So he calls Brittany's brother. And he says, look, can you come in for a chat? I'm just looking for some information. He says to Brittany's brother, look, has your sister ever been in trouble in her life? And he says, yeah, she has. Yep. She's been caught stealing a few times. She's got a bit of a rage, a bit of a temper, and she's gotten into plenty of fights. And Dimitri leads the conversation to this point. He says to Brittany's brother, is there any chance that your sister could have had something to do with this? And the brother says, no way. And Dimitri says, there's absolutely no way that Brittany could have organised for this attack on Jaina. You're telling me no way? And the brother says no. I think this is really telling. The minute the brother leaves the interview, the first thing he does is he calls Brittany and he says, if you have anything to do with this, if you organise this, you have to turn yourself in. And Brittany says, I didn't. I'm a victim in this situation. So there's a few loose ends. There's a few little bits and pieces up in the air around this story. So let's just try, my friends, to tie them up. The car that got moved. Well, tests come back and it's Jaina's blood in the car. Tests have shown that's her blood. So when Dimitri says to Brittany, do you have any idea how Jaina's blood got into her own car and it was parked a few blocks away from the store? Can you explain that at all? Because I can't make any sense of that. It just doesn't make any sense. And Brittany says, oh yes, actually I do know. The two attackers, they made me leave the store and move Jaina's car. And then they said, you have to come straight back to the shop. Huh? What? So, he's like, hang on one god dang minute. You're telling me that these two men said to you, here are her car keys, leave now, park her car 3 streets away, and then come back. And she says, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And he says, right, well, if that's what happened, how is Jaina's blood in the car? And she says, well, I must have touched Jaina before I left to move the car. Dimitri says again, but you told us you were in a different part of the shop. This doesn't make any sense. So he says, right, okay, let's just go with your idea. You're moving the car right? So you're outside. At no point did you think, I better run to the police. I better run to the Apple store next door. I basically better shout from the rooftops that two men have broken into the shop and are attacking us. You never thought to do that? And she says, no. Fuck me, what? She adds this, right? I did see a police officer in the street, but I didn't stop him. Right, the evidence. Let's do this. The shoes. The men's shoes, the size 14s. Apart from Brittany's footprints, these are the only footprints found in the shop. But they find the shoe. They find it in the store and it's covered in blood. So, right, okay. So just get this picture. The attackers committed rape and robbery and murder, and then one of them left wearing only one shoe. Give me a break. Come on. The robbery element. What was taken? Nothing. Not one thing. Not one yoga mat. Not one overpriced yoga bra. Not one pair of leggings. Nothing was taken. No robbery happened. Brittany's injuries. Superficial. Small scratches. And the only fingerprints found on the cable ties which bound her hands are her own fingerprints. So right by now, Dimitri has had enough. He calls Brittany in and he asks her directly, were there any attackers? She says yes. He says, you're lying. What actually happened, Brittany? Just talk us through what happened. But she won't talk. He says, fine. And to himself, he's known it since day one. He's absolutely known it. And right now, he's going to take the leap. He arrests Brittany Norwood for the murder of Jaina Murray. When this news breaks, it's complete shock. Some people will say Dimitri is mad. They'll say she's a victim. She was attacked. And he'll say, no, she's not. She's a cold-blooded murderer. And all the while, she protests her innocence. She will say she had nothing to do with it. Two men broke in. That's who did it. And so the case goes to court. And the facts begin to reveal themselves. On that evening, when Brittany called Jaina and set up the whole I've forgotten my train pass thing, it was all a lure to get Jaina back to the shop. Once they were inside, Brittany closed the door and an argument broke out between the two of them over the stolen yoga pants in Brittany's bag. It turned violent. And before Brittany knew what she was doing, she had begun to beat Jaina. And she basically just found whatever she could in the store to attack her with, striking her 331 times until she was dead. Forensic tests will show that the attack lasted 20 minutes and that for at least 18 minutes of that attack, Jaina was alive. Brittany then took a male shoe from the merchandise in the store. She put it on and she tracked blood throughout the shop. She then wrecked the shelves and the clothing racks to make it look like a robbery. She got hold of a knife, she gave herself a few wounds, and then she tied her hands together with cable ties and she lay down. And then she waited. She lay for hours with Jaina's dead body. She waited and she waited, and enter the store manager at 7:45 a.m. to find the scene and to go and get a man in the street to come in because she knew something was wrong. The courthouse was packed on the last day of Brittany's trial. The jury had a verdict. After 2 weeks of evidence and defence, the jury was back. And their verdict: guilty. Guilty of cold-blooded murder. In the courtroom, the crowds erupted in cheers, and the judge silenced them. This judge, I love this judge, by the way. I love this judge. He sentenced Brittany Norwood to life in prison without parole. He stated very clearly that he was sentencing with no parole to make it clear that the severity of Jaina's death was beyond brutal and there was no redemption for Brittany. After he had ruled this, once more the court erupted in cheers and in joy, and he had to silence them again, and he warned the crowd that once more, if he heard anything like cheering, he would remove them. Now, I'm just going to read you some of what the judge said, because I think it's so fitting, and I think it's so well said. He said these words: Ms. Norwood, this crime was cold-blooded, brutal, calculated, deliberate, devious, and malicious. You are one hell of a liar, ma'am. Brittany said back to the judge in this moment, before I go to prison, she said, I need you to hear how deeply sorry I am. Not for me, but for my family. Please reconsider no parole. This is a punishment for them as much as it is for me. The judge replied, I have no doubt, Ms. Norwood, that you are a deeply troubled woman. However, my sympathy for your plight, ma'am, does not begin to approach what I feel for the Murray family. You will live. You will see another sunrise and another sunset. It may be through a prison window. But there will be Christmases, there will be telephone calls, and there will be visits. The only visits Jaina Murray's family will ever have are to her grave. Mic drop, that judge. Jaina's mother reads her victim impact statement and she says, in our lives since Jaina's murder, there has been no hope, there's no laughter, and there's no joy. Her brother, and I'm not need to laugh at it, this is dark, man. He is dark. He gets up and he reads his statement and he says, I've researched Greek mythology surrounding the three Furies and Dante's 9 circles of hell. He says, I did this because I want to know what kind of hell awaits Ms. Norwood. And lastly, Jaina's long-term boyfriend, the one I said who was planning to propose, says, I can no longer think of the children that we might have had, and how I hoped they would receive Jaina's beautiful smile, because my life is shattered and there is a dark cloud cast over my heart. Detective Dmitry Ruvin, he sat in court for the trial as it played out, and he was applauded for his fantastic detective work in this case, and for working out that it was Brittany. He wrote this on Jaina's Facebook page. Dear Jaina, we never met, but after meeting your family, I feel like I got to know you a little bit. They are an amazing bunch, and I don't even have to wonder how you became to be you. As we go on with our lives, please continue to watch over them. Thank you, and take care. Oh, I think that's nice. I do, I think that's really nice. The Norwood family, they have tried to battle the very best that they can for what they say to be a fairer sentence for Brittany. They just want her to have even a chance that she might get out of prison someday. But that's not been successful. Brittany Norwood is currently in prison, and she will never be eligible for parole. And so ends the story. Alright then. Woof! Yeah, I know some of you will be like, oh yeah, I know the yoga store murder, but I just find it absolutely fascinating. You know what? The other thing about this story is you'll know this. I usually try to be nice about people. I usually try to reason things, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe she had rage issues, maybe she had undiagnosed mental health. But see, in this case, I literally feel like the judge. I'm like, nah, lock her up and throw away the key. The whole case just riles me. It makes me so angry. I just think that idea that you would kill someone that brutally and then lie there in that shop, and yeah, it's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. So, yeah. Anyway, that is the end of the story. If you would like to talk to me about it, or each other, or anyone, please do. That would be really good. And yeah, you know where you can do that. You can join the Facebook group. You can find me on Instagram, find me on Twitter, email me extraordinarystoriespodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, until we speak again, Michelle, Kinky Mark, Dee, and Old Man Malcolm, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Alright, until the next time. Okay. Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other.
Jaina's mother reads a victim impact statement. And she says, in her lives since Jaina's Murray. I think this is really telling. The minute the brother leaves the interview, he calls Jaina. No, he doesn't.
I would imagine from the look on his face. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over.